So whether it's summertime and you want to keep the garage cool, or it's wintertime and you want to keep it warm, your garage door is going to be a big factor in order to achieve that. So in this video, I'm going to show you the best way to do this with the easiest to use and best of materials available for the money. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So before we get started with the install, let's go over the tools that are going to be needed in order to do this, and also the materials that I'm going to be using that I really think are going to cut down on a lot of time and just make this installation as easy as possible. It's also going to look, in my opinion, the best out of all the other options that I saw out there. And as far as efficiency goes, you really can't beat it. So what I'm going to be personally using are these polystyrene pre-cut insulation boards. Now you can get these from your local home improvement store, or you can also order them online. And like always, of course, I'll provide links for not only the materials that I'm going to be using in this video, but also all the tools that I'll be using in order to make this installation possible. When you click on those links, it'll take you directly to whatever you're wanting to look at, and you can check them all out for yourself. So again, this is a polystyrene board. It's a lot like styrofoam, but it offers some of the highest insulation values for its size and thickness. So with a lot of these kits, they mostly all come with these being pre-cut at 20 1/4 inch wide. A lot of times they'll be 54 inches long, and this particular board is 1 1/4 inch thick. Now, with that 1 1/4 inch, that's not a lot when it comes to insulation, but that's about all that you can fit in the channels of a garage door. But with the 1 1/4 inch thickness, with this polystyrene board, you're getting almost an R5 value, which is pretty efficient when you consider the thickness. The only way that you're really going to get a higher efficiency rating or a higher R value with that particular thickness is if you're spraying something like a closed cell foam, which you definitely do not want to be spraying on your garage door. And I'm also going with the pre-cut kit just because it's going to make everything so much easier. The width that's already here at 20 1/4 inches, most of your garage door panels, like in behind here, that is the width, or I should say the height, of each one of those bays. So there really isn't going to be a whole lot of cutting when it comes to the width of this board. Now you will want to make sure that you're measuring all of your bays, because depending on the height of the door, some of those bays you may have to cut this down a little bit on the long side. And typically when you buy these kits, they're designed for a single bay 8 or 9 foot door. So if you have a 16 to 18 foot door like I have in behind me here, you're going to actually need to get 2 kits, because your standard garage door is only going to be around 8 to 9 feet wide. And for the most part, these are all the tools that we're going to need in order to install this, so not a whole lot. We're going to need some sort of a straight edge or a square in order to make those nice, neat lines. We're going to need a marker in order to mark those lines and our measurements. I would recommend using some sort of a razor blade, especially one of these retractable ones. And of course, we're going to need a tape measure in order to get our measurements. So pretty self-explanatory. All right, so here on my garage door, as you can see, I've got these long bays here. These are pretty standard on pretty much everybody's garage doors. But if we look over here, I've got 2 squares of equal size. Now, these, when you total these 2 together, that is going to equal the length of that longer piece. But I've also got this brace that's right here in the middle. So I'm actually going to be cutting off a little bit more when I get to these places. But a lot of your standard garage doors are just going to have one of these side by side, whereas on some of these larger garage doors, they have to put extra bracing in. Now, speaking of extra bracing, you might see these horizontal braces here. A lot of garage doors, it's just going to depend on how many you have on your garage door, but this is wind bracing. Now, when there's only one of these that are covering the bays, oftentimes it's not too difficult to slide it up underneath of there and get that insulation in, so it doesn't need to be taken down. But when I've got 2 covering the same bay like I've got right here, a lot of times I'm going to have to remove at least one of them in order to get that sheet up into that bay. All right, so I'm going to start on an easy one. I'm going to get my measurements for this top right bay right here. I'm going to measure the length first, and I'm right at 53 1/4 inch length this way. And then when I measure the height, I'm right at 20 1/2 inch. So the boards are at 20 1/4 inch, which is going to be just about perfect, because you actually want them to be a little bit shorter than the dimensions that you're measuring out. I typically like to cut off around 1/16 of an inch extra off from my measurement. It just helps it to fit in there a little bit easier, and there's really no concerns as far as there being a gap. It fits in there nice and snug pretty much every single time. And I'll just show you really quickly on my garage door how this looks. This profile here, there really isn't much of a lip here. There's a little bit of a step down, but the board is thicker than this lower area here. So I'm measuring from the top portion right here to the top portion over here on this other side, and ignoring this lower area because it's just not going to fit in there. But then if we look down here at the bottom, you'll see there's a lip right here. So we do want to measure down to the bottom inside of this lip because the board will fit in this area here. And then we'd also want to do the same at the top, which I know it's really hard to see because this wind brace is in the way. But the lip on the top is actually usually around 1/4 inch deeper. So that's actually where I'm going to want to start my board to get extra clearance. All right, so again, the length of the bay was at 53 1/4 inches. So I got 53 1/4, but I always like to take off at least about 1/16 of an inch because that's going to really help us get it into that bay a lot easier. So I mark the top, move to the bottom, measure it out again, 53 1/4, and take off 1/16 of an inch. Then I'll take my square, use it as a straight edge, just line up those two marks with each other so we have a nice straight line. And then we're just going to make a line all the way down the straight edge so we know where to cut. Then I'll just take my razor blade and cut it all the way down that line, as opposed to just cutting it over just air. If you have a backer board of some sort, it helps with any tear out on the other side. Now we'll just take that newly cut board, push it up into the bay. I like to start at the top again because it has more depth there and it allows at the bottom for this to go in a lot easier. And so it just pops into place just like that. Now the lower lip is the key. As soon as you can start getting the board over that lower lip, it just takes a little bit of pushing then, but having a little bit of resistance on getting it in there is actually a good thing. It means it's going in there nice and tight, and that's exactly what we want. Now something just as an added tip, I like to take something that has a straight edge on it, like this putty knife here, and I like to go along the sides and try and just kind of pull that board out to the very edge of this lip. What I'm trying to do by doing that is I'm trying to create an air pocket in behind this insulation. With insulation, you want to have that air pocket in behind it. It helps with keeping the heat in the summer and the cold in the winter in that air pocket. You're not going to get as much of that transient heat or cooling coming through the board. So I just go along the sides, just pull it out like that. It doesn't take any time at all. And again, it's going to make a big difference. All right, so now we're just going to move over to the left a bay or two. So this is at 22 1/2 inch. Just make sure on this one, if it's the same, it is 22 1/2 inch. So it's not a big deal. Instead of just having one long piece, we're just gonna need one piece to cover these two slots here. So we'll just go ahead, take our measurements and cut it down. So on this one, I'll measure out to 22 1/2 inches, subtract about 1/16 of an inch again, one at the top, and then one on the other side. Then before I do anything else, I'm now gonna take a measurement from this end of the board so I can get my square over here. So again, we're gonna go 22 1/2 minus 1/16 of an inch there, and then on the other side of the board as well. Then take the straight edge, line those two marks up, and then make our line. Gonna do the same with the second one, line the two marks up, and then make the line. Now, I found on the first board, I definitely wanted to take this slow and easy because if you go too fast, I don't know if you noticed or not, but on that first board, I did cut just slightly too much. It wasn't a perfectly straight line on one of the corners. So I want to do my best in order to make this as straight as possible so the fit is as tight as possible. And a lot of the time, I will cut through the board more than once just to make sure I'm getting that nice clean cut. I don't want to be tearing the excess or the board away from what I'm cutting. Now, some of you may be wondering, especially on that first one that I did, and then as I'm putting in more of these, you may be wondering how much can you bend these in order to get them into place without them snapping. And I found that it's going to take quite a bit in order to snap these. What's so great about these kits is if we flip it over to the unfinished side, you can see there's grooves cut in it all along the entire face of the back side of this board. What that's doing is it's allowing you to bend this board without putting too much pressure on it or tension to where it would cause a normal polystyrene or styrofoam board to break. It's also going to make it easier on you in order to get them into those places. So again, this is just another one of the reasons why I really personally for myself and for anybody else that was wanting to do this, I really recommend the kits because they're already going to have these score lines on them. All right, so I'm just going to take one of my cut boards here, push it up into the top lip. Once that's in there and seated, that's when now I can start focusing on the bottom lip here and start bending this board to where it will then fit into place. All right, so now that one's in there really nice and tight, and I've got that air gap created by using this putty knife again and just pulling the face of this all the way out to the front of the lips. And I'll just do the exact same thing with this second one. Push it up into the top first, then work on bending and getting that bottom edge over the top of that lip. This one's going in a lot easier because I chose to start trying to bend it more and it just went over that lip super easy. And so then it just pops into place just as easy as that. Go around again with my putty knife again, pull that out to the edge. Perfect. All right, so really quickly, I want to just show you a little bit of change in as far as the heat that can radiate off of a garage door. Now, my door faces the north, so it never really gets direct sunlight, but it is a pretty hot day today, and you're going to notice a little bit of a difference between the metal and then where I've already installed the insulation at. So I'll take my infrared thermometer here, And as you can see, we're reading about 102, 103 degrees here. If we go up here to the top and put it on the insulation board, it's right at 92, 93 degrees. So that's a 10-degree difference between the bare metal and the insulation board being installed. So now for the most part, I'm just gonna repeat everything that I just did right here on those first 3 bays. Of course, you wanna make sure that you're continuing to take your measurements on every single bay, just because depending on the size of your garage door, you can't just assume that every single one of those panels are this exact same length and height, especially when it comes to the height. For the most part, you can generally see each bay, they're gonna be the same length as long as you're going up and down in a column. But when it comes to the height, they can oftentimes be smushed down a little bit if your door is a little bit shorter, and they needed to do that in order to make your door fit into the opening. Now, something else to note with these kits or using polystyrene is it's one of the lightest insulations that you can install. So on average though, you can think about it this way. If you have a single bay 8 or 9 foot door, you're gonna add probably around 4 to 7 pounds of insulation to that door. If you have a double bay or 2-car garage with a 16 to 18 foot door, you're gonna be more around 9 to 14 pounds of added weight from that insulation. Is that going to be a big deal for most garage door openers? Probably not, but one thing you will want to do is you will want to test to make sure that your door is not struggling to go up. And if you are finding that it's not going up as easily as it used to, it seems as though the garage door opener is maybe struggling a little bit, then you'll definitely want to stop doing that. And the torsion spring is going to have to be adjusted to then balance that garage door back out. And while this can be a DIY job, there are some videos out there showing people how to do this. Just bear in mind, it can also be a very dangerous job. So I really recommend for something like that, probably have a pro come out, adjust the torsion spring. They can also then inspect the torsion spring, especially if it's an older one. Make sure that it's in good shape, that it can handle that a little bit extra load, and that everything is just going to be balanced out the way that it should be so that your garage door opener is not struggling. But again, for the most part, just adding this amount of weight, which again is extremely light for insulation, most of the time you're probably not going to see that it's causing any kind of an issue. But it is definitely something that you at least want to keep in mind. All right, so as you can see, the whole garage is now completely finished. I will say about this kit, I can't really recommend it enough. It made everything so much easier. I love how the facing of it has that nice shiny white finish to it. That's gonna really help with brightening up the space of whatever you're installing it in, whether it's a shop or a garage. That light's gonna reflect off of that white a lot better than any other color, and it's just gonna brighten up the whole space. The kit was incredibly easy to install. On a standard single bay garage, you can expect probably to spend about 30 to 45 minutes installing it, and then of course probably around double if you've got one about my size. But again, really recommend using one of these kits. The R value that you get in that 1.25 inch almost can't be beat. Getting an almost R5 value at again 1.25 inch, you're just not really going to find that in a whole lot of places. And since most of these are already cut down to the size that you're going to need for your particular garage door, it just makes everything a whole lot faster and a whole lot easier. And again, like I said earlier, I'll have links for everything that you saw in this video, from the materials to all the tools that were used. I'll have links for all of it down in the description down below. When you click on those links, it'll take you directly to them so you can check them all out for yourself. So one of the biggest keys to doing this is just taking your time. Make sure you're not completely forcing things in where they don't necessarily want to go in. It might just mean that you just need to trim a little bit more off, and they're going to pop in there a lot easier. Now, if you found value in this video, then you're definitely going to find value in this video right over here, where I go over some maintenance items that you really should be doing at least on a yearly basis with your garage door to make sure that it continues to run as well as it can and also last as long as possible. If that's of interest to you, all you have to do is click on it. It will take you directly to it. So I hope that you found value in this video, and if you did, if you could do me a huge favor, hit that thumbs up button right down below. And of course, if you have any questions or comments still, you can leave those down in the comment section. And I'll catch you all in the next one. See ya.